Hi, everyone. Delighted to see you all here. Thank you for being here with us. This is going to be a very exciting conversation, I think, with my very good friend and colleague, Kathy Rose. And 2025, I don't know how Kathy feels, but I personally feel it's probably the biggest year of our lifetime so far. I think it's absolutely immense. So, Kathy, I love dearly. I think we've known each other for about 20 years or so. Kathy, we were doing our master's course at about the same time, and that's how I got to know Kathy. She is incredibly respected in the astrological community. She is a superb astrologer and also world-class teacher, and very well known for her teaching. And I regularly recommend clients to go to Kathy. So it's always an absolute joy to share. Thanks for being with me here today, Kathy.
Well, and likewise, I am so happy to be here with you and excited to talk about this year, which is special in so many ways. I mean, the astrological patterns are really unusual. So we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to talk about this, and I look forward to going through the entire year. All right. So as we dive into 2025, Pam and I meditated on this and came up with kind of the big picture view of completions and beginnings. And this is really quite significant, I think, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I find it really, truly remarkable that in the next 18 months, we are going to see all of the outer planets changing signs. And a lot of that happening in 2025. So it really is remarkable in terms of a shift of energy. And I think we're moving into a completely new paradigm through 2025.
And the way that these planets are changing signs, this wave pattern where they move into the new sign, but then they go back to the old sign. We're going to be feeling this wave, this shifting, beginning, completion. So energetically, I think this is going to be fascinating. All right, so let's dive in. We're going to be sharing in this presentation some hot spots during this year. Uh, and there are a few months that I'm considering hot spots that are a few months of the year that are incredibly fascinating to me. I bet you feel the same way, right?
I do. And for me, it's July. July just shines out like a beacon. So it'd be interesting to compare notes on this, Kathy.
Yeah, and interesting for me, I'm looking at April in particular, March and April, and then June. So my eye, gosh, for about the past 4 or 5 years, as I scan my ephemeris, which is the planetary movement, has been stopping at April, May, and June for years. So we're in the same zone here. We could extend that to July also. We're going to be talking about themes for development for the year. And of course, as we've already mentioned, the outer planet cycles that are changing and power moments. So we have a whole lot to focus on here. The worldview is your zone, Pam. Pam is an expert at mundane astrology.
Yeah, and mundane doesn't mean boring. In fact, it's jolly interesting. It comes from the Latin meaning mundus, meaning the world. And I think our world is going to go through some extraordinarily rapid changes next year and ongoing. So we're looking at big picture cycles in terms of the planetary shifts and the waves of development in history. And for sure, you will see very clearly in this presentation with Kathy and I what we're talking about with completions and beginnings. And it's very exciting.
And then my focus tends to be the personal view, how to take these energies and integrate them and utilize it in your own life for your own personal empowerment. So I'll be mentioning as we go through these month by month forecasts, how you can focus on your own development using these cycles. So we're going to have both views, the world view, the big picture view for humanity, and then our own personal view. All right, so let's start. I'll start off with a personal view for 2025 and I'll show a graphic. This is I create an ephemeris that talks about the wave patterns for the planets, and I use this when I teach astrology. And what this shows, you're going to see 2025 and 2026 on screen, and it shows for Jupiter on out to Pluto the forward retrograde forward wave pattern for the year. In other words, the degrees that these planets are going to activate. And I want to show you something that I think is fascinating. First of all, we begin the year with Jupiter in Gemini, and in June it moves to Cancer. But I want to show you for Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Saturn is going to operate between 25 Pisces and 1 Aries. So the highest degree it will reach is 1 Aries, and then it retrogrades back to 25 Pisces, and it's going to go in between those 2 degrees all year. Now, if you have planets anywhere between 25 mutable and 1 cardinal, then you're going to be activated by this Saturn transit. Uranus is going to operate between 27 Taurus and 1 Gemini. Neptune's going to operate 29 Pisces and 2 Aries. So let's just focus for a second on Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Do you see on screen, and I'll give you my cursor, these three right here, what's going on? They operate at the end of the sign they've been in. They touch the new sign, but then they're going to go back. So this wave pattern is fascinating. They start the new development, but then they scoot back in their old sign. And Pluto is fully into Aquarius right now. Let's just take a second look at 26 and notice the difference. Saturn fully goes into Aries in 26. Uranus is fully in Gemini. Neptune is completely into Aries. So 2026 is like a resolution year. They're finally in these new signs. They're cruising forward. It's 2025 that we have such a fascinating pattern going back and forth and back and forth. Anything you
Yeah,
want to
that's a
add?
super helpful chart, Kathy. And it's a chart that people can refer to all through the year, but it really emphasizes what a year of transition 2025 is.
Um, I don't know when in history we had such a year
Yeah.
where the outer planets were doing this, especially because Saturn and Neptune moving together in this phase. It's just really fascinating. All
Yeah, I
right,
haven't
so
been able to find a time in history either, actually. It's quite remarkable.
okay, so why don't you talk about Pluto in Aquarius now that it's finally in the sign fully?
Yeah, there's so much to say about this, and I have several videos out there on YouTube about Pluto in Aquarius because I could spend a whole day on this, but just to be focused here, historically, it has always, when Pluto was moved into Aquarius, out of Capricorn, of course, there has always been a shrinkage in top-down power and at the beginning of a shift of power to the people, always, whether you're looking at the 1500s, the late 1700s, whether you're looking at the church or autocratic monarchies, or perhaps today you might consider corporations and other top down controlling institutions. Whatever form it takes, the pattern is always the same, that there's a reduction in the domination of those top down institutions and just the beginning of the shift of power to the people. And I think we can see this already with the revolution starting to happen in farming in the Netherlands, in France, in the UK, in the US. This is just the beginning, and also a surge in technological innovation that is going to go right across the spectrum of science, medicine, aviation in particular, I think. And this is going to be really fascinating. And every day on Facebook, I'm posting several brilliant innovations that very young people are developing, often school children are developing, because of course Aquarius is linked to youth, and it's something certainly I've anticipated over the last couple of years, and it's just thrilling to see how they are changing the world for the better.
And
So
it's
very
just beginning. It's just beginning. I mean, this is what we need to remind people. Pluto stays in a sign for a long time, 20 years. And we're just tapping into the beginning part of this phase, and it's going to grow and grow and grow. We also have a lot going on with Saturn and Neptune as they finish this cycle in Pisces. Neptune takes about 14 years, and Saturn joining it at the very last degree of the sign.
Yeah, and this is so interesting because we have had, we're all well aware, some very extreme and tragic events, be they war, be they extreme flooding. We had the South Carolina issue, the Hurricane Helene. So, we've had some really extreme situations. And what that has done is bring people together with a great deal of compassion. Communities have pulled together. People from across the world have sent healing, have sent money to charities. And there is a real feeling of we are one. There, by the grace of God, it could have been us. And so that has heightened the compassion, I think. And also, Neptune, particularly in Pisces, is increasing everyone's psychic sensitivity. And don't worry, it hasn't happened to you yet. It's an ongoing thing, but that is the direction of travel.
Mhm. This has triggered last year when we did the 2024 forecast. I talked about my teaching series called Activate Your Intuition, and I was going to release it in video form, but I wasn't happy with how the DVDs translated into digital, so I never did release it. Now I've decided it needs to be a book, so I'm actively working on getting that book ready. And it gives you step-by-step approach to how to activate your intuition, how to cleanse your energy, how to shift to your soul. All of these highly spiritual techniques. It's very technique oriented, which is Saturn and Neptune and Pisces. So that book hopefully is going to be coming out by springtime of 25 to celebrate Saturn and Neptune at the very last degree of Pisces, because this whole spiritual dimension is ripe for development. And if we consider Neptune being this high spiritual, formless, evanescent, floaty, spacey energy, and Saturn being the practical planet, I always imagine that, especially Neptune and Pisces, is like a helium balloon that will just float around if you let go of the string. But Saturn puts an anchor on it and brings it down into the earth form. So we are learning how to take charge of our own spirituality.
That's beautiful. Perfect timing, as you say, Kathy. And, it really is about a practical guide to achieving transcendence, isn't it? That's how I think of Neptune at its best as well. So beautiful. I'm very happy to interview you on that when it comes around. Perfect as Neptune moves into Aries on the 30th of March.
Yes. So this next graphic, I chose this image mindfully because as I scan through 2025, and again, I feel this pendulum swinging between two energies, and how we react to that. Just when we get used to Saturn and Neptune hitting the last degree of Pisces, it shifts into Aries, which is a totally different dynamic. And then just when we get used to that, it shifts back to Pisces. So this pendulum swinging, we're going to be feeling that. We're going to be feeling the impact of energies switching. So completions and beginnings. Keep this image in mind because if you understand that, I think you're going to go through this year with a little bit more harmony.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that graphic. Thank you, Kathy.
So, Pam, let's start off talking about Saturn and Neptune when they move into Aries, when they finally leave Pisces. And we're going to have the timing of this in the next slide. So, before we talk about the timing, let's just talk about the energy dynamic. So, when they move into Aries, why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I think while they are still in Pisces, it can be a time of a lot of dreaming, a lot of escapism, a lot of a lot of meditation, perhaps on what your ideal life would be, or an ideal dimension to your life. And once they move into Aries, that is much clearer. It's action. It's a cardinal fire sign. It's taking action. Okay, what are we going to do to make that real? And I feel that very strongly. And I think for many people, and Kathy's going to talk about the personal side, of course, but for many people, it's a whole new you that you've been dreaming about during Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. I think more spiritual leaders will come through, but please use discernment, because Neptune can, it can in its shadow side be linked to deception or what's true, what's not. It can be quite shadowy. So always check in with your heart as to, is this person legitimate, authentic? Do they have integrity? Are they acting for your highest good and for humanity's highest good? That is going to be very important as we move forwards in terms of who emerges.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember Aries is a fire sign and it's cardinal, and what it's really working on is action, taking action, movement forward, pioneering, initiating something new. But the biggest difference between Aries and Pisces is that Aries is focused very much on self-sufficiency, very, very much on bringing forward that energy and taking charge with courage, being brave. So, when it comes to spirituality and spiritual leaders, yes, I would say always beware of spiritual leaders that are hooking into ego, wanting to control. And really pay attention to any spiritual leaders that are focused on teaching you how to be empowered and teaching you that you already have this connection, teaching you to get your own answers rather than hooking into power issues. But action, courage, self-sufficiency, this all comes forward very, very powerfully.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. Yeah, it's a whole new start, isn't it, Kathy, for many?
I'm very excited about it going into Aries. I love Aries energy. So in this slide, it may look complicated, but really what I wanted to show were the wave patterns of timing. Again, it is so fascinating that we have Saturn and Neptune moving in this wave together, within months of each other. So Saturn in Pisces starts off in 2025, goes from January, and in late May, Saturn will move into Aries. Neptune will stay in Pisces until late March. So we have the first several months of the year with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. Neptune moves into Aries first, Saturn follows. Then they both stay in Aries through the summer months, through late spring and into the summer, and actually into fall for the northern hemisphere here. I'm speaking of the seasons per the northern hemisphere because a lot of people from Australia and the southern hemisphere are listening. But Saturn will go into Aries early September. Neptune goes into Aries will leave Aries and go back into Pisces in September. Neptune will leave Aries and go back into Pisces end of October. So we get this delicious time in late spring and all through the summer and into the fall with Saturn and Aries and Neptune and Aries. Then they go back. Saturn and Neptune retrograde back into Pisces um, from September, October timeframe until the early months of 2026, at which time then they zoom forward and they don't go back into these signs. Very interesting pattern.
Yeah, and they become exact to the degree and minute conjunct 20th of February 2026. So it's almost like through the late spring and summer, as Kathy is, this is a great chart again, Kathy, that we get a taster, we get glimpses of how this is going to work in the world and in our own lives. And Saturn conjunct Neptune, as many of you know, has a very reliable 36-year cycle. But I haven't been able to find a time in history when that conjunction has happened at zero of Aries. Somebody wrote to me and said that it last happened 12,960 years ago. I haven't been able to validate that, but either way, it's a very long time. And so this is quite remarkable as the very first degree of the zodiac. I call it the creator degree. It's a whole new level of initiating. And that Saturn Neptune cycle, 36 repeating cycle, resonates to Russian history because those conjunctions happened in recent time in 1917, Russian Revolution, 1952 and 53. That was birth of Putin, death of Stalin, and then 1989, which was the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the beginning of the collapse of the Soviet Empire, Soviet Union. And this conjunction happens again 2025, 2026. So there's going to be some kind of redefinition of Russia as all of those previous dates 1917, 1952, 53, and 1989, they were all very clear boundary points to redefine Russia. So, what's going to be happening this time around?
You know, the other thing, the United States chart has, for me, I've always questioned it because we don't know exactly when the United States was born, the time of day. You know, there are several different versions of it. But if you pick what's called the Sibley chart, which is the most common one that astrologers use, then it puts on the IC, which is the fourth house cusp, the Aries point. What was it, 0 or 1 degree Aries? I think it's
One,
1 degree.
one degree,
One
one
degree
degree
Aries,
Aries. Yeah.
which is where Saturn and Neptune are going to hit and activate. So for the US, this conjunction from Saturn and Neptune in Aries, called what I call it the Aries point, it's going to activate this in the US. Now, when the Aries point is activated, and as we go through the month by month, we're going to be talking about this specifically. Aries point reveals something. Something wants to be seen. Something comes into view. It's public focus. So there's going to be a lot revealed as we go through this year. And the other thing I talk about on a personal level, when Aries point is activated, if people are operating with deception or scandalously, you know, anything that isn't above board, it tends to become visible, tends to be seen. You tend to get caught. So this year, a lot's going to come into public focus and be revealed, and especially for the US.
I could not agree more, Kathy. I think 2025 is a massive year of revelation in a bigger way than we've ever seen before. We're just at the beginning of that.
Yep, on a personal level, just live your integrity and let it shine because something wants to shine. So, on a personal view with Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, it connects with our inner hero. It connects with courage, initiative, being brave, having empathy, which is Neptune, with boundaries, which is Saturn. Which, you know, I do astrology consultations every day, and a large number of people who call are empaths, highly sensitive, empathic people. And what empathic people need to learn is that it's okay for them to have boundaries. It's okay for them to learn to turn their senses on and off on command, which is something in my book, Activate Your Intuition. I'm going to talk about that because it is an essential skill to learn to have those boundaries. Well, Saturn and Neptune in Aries helps us learn that sensitivity and empowerment, sensitivity and courage, sensitivity and confidence, because um, Aries is about confidence. It's you know, courageous. Anything to add there, Pam?
No, I would agree completely. And of course, our empathy is going to be heightened, not only because Neptune is still going to be sort of in and out of the end of Pisces, but also because the North Node is moving into Pisces. So our empathy is going to be heightened. So we're going to need the boundaries even more because of that.
Bringing it down to earth and making it work, not letting it control you, but you having a sense of control in your own psyche for how to manage it. Yeah. All right, so we talked about the pendulum and the movement with Saturn and Neptune going back and forth between two signs, and now we have this also with the planet Uranus. Just imagine in your mind hearing these balls going whack, you know, click, you know, because we're going to be feeling an impact from that as Uranus hits the last degree of Taurus, moves into Gemini and back. And here's the timing of this.
And those energies are so different, Kathy, aren't they? Taurus to Gemini. I mean, Taurus is fixed earth, it's solid, it doesn't want things to change. Gemini is mutable air, it wants to change all the time, it wants to move around lickety split really fast. They are utterly, utterly different energies, and we're all going to feel that somewhere in our lives.
Absolutely, very much. Uranus entered Taurus in May of 2018. In July of this year, July of 2025, it will enter Gemini and it will stay there until November. So in November, Uranus backs up into Taurus and it will complete that transit in Taurus until April of 2026. And there is a massive difference in how we experience Taurus energy versus Gemini. And actually, I would say that Uranus is much happier in Gemini than Taurus because Taurus is fixed and resists change, and Uranus is all about change. It's about adventure. It's about growing and expanding. And Taurus goes, no, 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 no. But Gemini goes, sure. Where, when, how? So I wanted to show this graphic, Uranus in Taurus. This is a photo that was taken by my good friend, great photographer, Shayla Craighead, when we were at a park here in Virginia Beach, doing a photo shoot for me. And I love moss and I love mushrooms. And I saw this, said, oh, get it, get it. So she captured it. And I think it very much symbolizes Uranus and Taurus because, the mycelium that goes with mushrooms and fungus, which is the Earth's internet. It's nature's internet, the ability to communicate through the earth, through the soil, but it's also very stable. So I think what Uranus and Taurus has been trying to teach us since 2018 is to be present in the now, to be available, to have all of our atoms in this moment, take a deep breath, trust, and know when you need to get information, it will come in, and then you take action. And so Uranus and Taurus, I think, has been trying to get us to trust that we always get information when we need it, because Taurus likes to get it in advance because that's how it feels safe. Let me know in advance, let me have it planned out because then I feel safe. And Uranus and Taurus has been offering something new. So we get to fine tune that all this time when Uranus is hitting the very last degree of Taurus and connect with the earth and feel that nourishment.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image, Kathy. And of course, while Uranus has been in Taurus, we've had all kinds of advances in digitization of currencies because Taurus is linked to wealth and currencies, and also lots of extreme weather events because Uranus is particularly linked to strong winds and storms, and Taurus is the earth herself, and so we've had that manifestation as well, and that's going to continue, obviously, particularly through the last few degrees of Taurus, I would say, because it brings things to a culmination as it moves through those last few degrees.
Yeah, because just the same with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. That's the anaretic degree. And Uranus and Taurus at 29 Taurus, anaretic degree. And the very last degree of a sign creates an extreme pressure to really get what you were supposed to learn from that transit. So understand your ability to breathe and to be calm and to bring your focus back into this moment, which is how we manage anxiety, because anxiety is usually surging forward to some scary moment in the future. But when you bring it back into this moment and you ground yourself, then you're going to be able to really use Uranus and Taurus at the highest level and feel empowered. But it changes when it moves to Gemini. Look at the difference in the image. Feel it, everybody. Just feel that shift when Uranus goes into Gemini.
Yeah, and I think what you've just shared so beautifully, Kathy, sets us up very well for Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius, because both Aquarius and Gemini are linked to our nervous systems. And because those signs are so fast moving, our nervous system has the potential to get very jazzed up with the amount of information coming in. So I think that's wonderful advice. Uranus moving into Gemini, some of the very obvious manifestations of this are more galactic connections, because Uranus and the sign it rules, Aquarius, where Pluto is currently, are the sign and the planet most linked to our galactic family. Remember, they are our family. We are galactic beings ourselves. This is our lineage. And increasingly, I mean, many people channel galactic beings already. They are very loving, supportive beings here to help us evolve. And of course, we have a lot going on in our skies right now, and we anticipated this. It's my personal view that the galactics would not arrive in drones. It would be like humans arriving in a horse and cart. They have much more sophisticated technology than that. So that is my personal view. But at a higher level, yes, they are here to support us, because as I understand it, the Earth's evolution is one of the keys to the evolution of the entire universe. And that's why they're giving us such support. So please do not go into fear with whatever is occurring in the skies right now. I think Gemini is linked to local transport, buses, cars, that kind of thing. I think we're going to see huge innovations. Already, the prototypes for flying cars, and in fact, in northeastern England, in Coventry, an airport is being built for flying cars right now. New internets, new technological solutions, new social media platforms, particularly new internets and different social media channels that promise freedom, Uranus, that promise freedom of speech, Uranus in Gemini. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that moving away or resisting censorship as we move forward. I think they're going to be big themes too.
And I think it helps advance this whole concept that our thoughts, our energy, and our thoughts and our words help co-create our reality. As Uranus goes into Gemini, our focus can be on the very basic self-fulfilling prophecy, which is be mindful what you are telling yourself because you get to be right. And so paying attention to the words you use, the beliefs that you have, your foundational beliefs, and how that helps to create your reality. And this definitely works with Pluto in Aquarius side by side. And this definitely works with Saturn and Neptune in Aries, which is I'm going to be responsible for where I send my energy, where I send my mental energy, where I send my verbal energy. One last thing about Uranus and Gemini that I like is the curiosity will be very strong. And if you can surrender and relax and bring your energy into the present moment, brilliant new ideas can flow through you and they'll pop in. They'll pop like popcorn if you can allow that. Now, it's not going to happen if you're scattered and if you're frenzied with your thoughts, thinking of the past, thinking of the future, all over the place. But if you can use what you learn from Uranus and Taurus, learn to center and be in the present moment, then Uranus and Gemini, oh my God, there is no limits to the creative potential you have with your thoughts and your ideas and your communications with other people. Very exciting.
Yeah, beautifully said. I'd really agree with that, Kathy, because the shadow side of Gemini is scattering, because it's mutable air, it's divergent energy, isn't it? Very easy to get scattered. But yeah, we must become masters of our energy and our frequency. And I think Saturn Neptune's very much part of that picture too.
And the role our mind plays, the role the subconscious plays in creating our reality, and the responsibility we have and the accountability we need to focus on in where we are sending our energy. So I'm excited about this, very excited. So that was kind of the big picture preview we wanted to offer you. And now we're going to go month by month. Um, and we'll try to be very succinct because we have a whole year to get through. But we're going to point out the hot spots and the interesting time frames. And here's where I want to say, please remember, as you go through the year, you can review this many, many times. In fact, the feedback we had from our 2024 forecast, many people said they went back through the year and re-listened to parts of it as the year advanced, and they found it to be very helpful. So keep that in mind. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Worldview, which is Pam's area for January.
Yeah. So the nodal axis shifts out of Aries Libra into Pisces Virgo on the 12th of January. It will stay on that axis Pisces Virgo for another 18.6 months until July 27. And I think what this will teach us, and it's very much part of this increasing spiritual focus, is it will help us to see our earth as conscious and sacred, truly as Gaia, not just a lump of rock that we've exploited. And so this will bring up, I think, a lot of ancient wisdom, the ancient wisdom of the earth and all the natural medicines it can produce, the plants, the essential oils, etc. And it will help to give us a faith in something greater than self. I think the other thing it will do is help us to get in touch with our spiritual selves in a bigger way. There's a company called REM Space, and they have a particular program called Remyo that connects dreamers via electrodes. So they start to synchronize their dreams, which of course is the realm of Pisces and its ruler Neptune, which I think is fascinating. So all of this area of consciousness dreams will come into bigger view. Very differently, right at the end of January, Uranus becomes stationary retrograde at 23 degrees of Taurus. And that is very interesting because it's almost exactly on the Jupiter Uranus conjunction that all astrology was talking about, that happened on the 20th, 21st of April this year, 2024. And that was an aspect of awakening.
Mhm.
So I think we're going to see a lot of truth, a lot of revelation, as Kathy's been saying, a lot of revelation, and this really sets us up for the whole year. It may be seismic, it could be shocking, it could be changes to the financial system again, because we're still in Taurus. It could be cyber attacks, aviation disruptions, more galactic news, more extreme weather. It could be all or any of those things. But Uranus is going to be writ large at the end of January.
Yes, thank you. And if we add the personal view for January, what I find interesting is how much activity there's going to be with the flavor of Mars. So Mars flavors the month. On January 4th, it will retrograde back into Cancer. Now, we're in the middle of a big Mars cycle. The Mars cycle started September, October when it entered Cancer, and it is going retrograde, which is why it's going to be staying in a particular zone for so long. So Mars activated Cancer, went into early Leo. On January 4th, it goes back into Cancer. So it begins the retrograde. So people who have planets between 17 degrees Cancer and 6 Leo, which I do, I've been highly activated by this Mars cycle. We get to experience a really strong dose of motivational energy, a really strong dose of action energy. So Mars 4th, or January 4th, Mars retrogrades back into Cancer. Just before that, Mars is going to be opposite Pluto. The final opposition between Mars Pluto happens on January 3rd at 1 degree Leo and Aquarius. Mars Pluto energy is pretty dynamic. We need to be using this on a personal level for courage and confidence and getting work done, achieving our goals. Because if it's not used consciously, this is when fighting, this is when attacking energy takes place. So if you use it mindfully, you can get a lot done. Do you have anything to say about Mars Pluto opposition on January 3rd?
Yeah, I really would share that, Kathy, because if it's externalized, it can be brute force.
Mhm.
Brute force, it can be warlike. They're both planets of power. They can be related to quite a lot of anger. And so the more we can integrate them as our own sense of internal power, in peace, the better this will work because it can be pretty wild, pretty explosive.
Mhm. And we can certainly do that. If you're a conscious person, just live the Mars energy with courage instead of force or anger. Live it with your ability to achieve your goals. But so continuing on with this Mars energy, on January 13th, there's a full moon in Cancer with Mars. So Mars is flavoring that full moon mid-month. And then January 16th, Mars is opposite Sun. So in January, connect with action energy. Now, personally, in classical astrology, they would say Mars in Cancer um, doesn't have a whole lot of power and because it's debilitated in Cancer. But I would disagree very much. When Mars is in Cancer, we're giving our energy to nurturing and caring. We're giving our energy to that mothering principle. I personally love, some of my best friends have Mars and Cancer. Mars and Cancer people are going to be the ones that when you arrive will make sure that cookies and tea are available, or make sure that you are warm enough, or that your chair is comfortable. So, we get to massage all that caring energy with Mars and Cancer. So use it well through the month of January and make sure. I think this is very important on a personal level. In January, you are caring for yourself. You are nurturing yourself. You are asking yourself, what do I need today in order to feel nurtured and soothed? It's a very important part of Mars and Cancer.
Yeah, beautiful.
February, worldview. That's you, Pam.
Yeah, and as you point out, Kathy, no retrograde planets, so absolutely full steam ahead. And boy, this is going to be so fast. So Jupiter stationary direct at 11 of Gemini. So remember, whenever a planet becomes stationary direct or retrograde, its symbolism is magnified. We are going to have a lot of information coming out. Jupiter, along with Uranus, they're the two planets linked to truth. And interestingly, Jupiter is conjunct US Uranus in the Sibley chart, US Uranus, which rules the third house of media. So we are going to have a lot of truth coming out that may be about the media or via the media. We will see what happens, but that is it can be quite shocking, actually, Jupiter Uranus combinations. Then we have the full moon square Uranus, and that, boy, that packs a punch because it's actually a T square because the full moon, obviously, sun and moon are opposite each other at a full moon, and they are both square to Uranus. So the moon is at 24 of Leo, and it's a very tight T square because Uranus is at 24 of Taurus and the sun is at 24 of Aquarius. So this is, I think, related to some kind of development of digitization, digital currencies, digital identity, because Uranus is the sign related to freedom, group freedom, humanitarianism. Leo is one of the signs most linked to sovereignty, and I'm not going to do that. So that will be fascinating to see. And then Kathy's just been talking about how much Mars activation we have. Feb 23rd, Mars also moves stationary retrograde, or rather ends its retrograde, moves stationary direct at 17 of Cancer. That is conjunct the US Sun. And the US Sun rules the ninth house. That can be foreign relations or something legal. And when Mars is retrograde, it is actually closer to the Earth. And Mars is also going to be what's called out of bounds beyond the normal 23 degrees of the ecliptic north or south from, I believe it's the 30th of December through to the 7th of April. So Mars is strong. Mars is not weak retrograde. Mars is strong. Now, although it's ending its retrograde here, it is conjunct the US Sun and it's out of bounds for, again, some time up until the beginning of April. So we could see more activation around power play in the world and assertion, stay in peace.
Mhm.
Stay in peace because that affects the collective.
Make friends with the Mars paradigm within you, which is confidence. confidence, assertive energy, courage. Make friends with that because and take action because Mars is action energy for sure. Okay, so February on a personal view. This month intrigues me. First of all, because February 5th, Venus will enter Aries and will hit the AP stands for Aries point. Okay, Aries point is 0 degree of any cardinal sign. And this is the point that talks about high visibility, something being revealed, something coming forward. So Venus on February 5th hits 0 Aries. And then on February 15th, Mercury enters Pisces. Now, the reason that this is important for both of these, the reason I'm referencing these, is because Venus and Mercury are going to retrograde and they're going to work together in March and April. So, this entry point, February 5th and February 15th, pay attention to what's going on in your life. It's going to get highly developed for the next 2 months. So, I'm going to reference back to this. I find it phenomenally fascinating. Pay attention February, March, April to see what is developed because it's just juicy. So I'm going to develop that in the future slides. March and the worldview.
Yeah, boy. So here we have some of the things I picked out were March 14th as an eclipse, a lunar eclipse. I believe it's a total lunar eclipse, actually, at 23 of Virgo. It's going to be smack on my Pisces sun, so that'll be interesting. And we have a whole lineup in Pisces at that time because we have the Sun, Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node in Pisces. So this could bring up issues around flooding, around health. It could be a feeling of sort of overwhelm and depression, but also a lot of compassion coming in. But that's going to be a very interesting one in terms of health in particular, because Pisces Virgo tends to rule the health axis, our immune system. Pisces linked to the blood. So we will see what unfolds. So make sure you're in the best physical shape as you go through this year. Then March 29th, we have an eclipse. I believe it's the last one, Kathy, in Aries, because all the eclipses now, because the nodal axis has shifted into Virgo Pisces, they are going to be in those two signs. So this is the last one in Aries, but this is going to reinforce that sense of igniting something new and igniting something new for the world, I would say. So let us pay close attention to whatever is being initiated at that time. Because on March the 30th, Neptune backs that up by entering Aries. And it's going to be so interesting, as Kathy has noted here, that for most of March, Neptune will be at the anaretic degree of Pisces with the North Node. And this is really fascinating because, if I look at the chart for the euro currency, 29 degrees of Pisces will oppose the ascendant, the identity of the euro. So it'll be very interesting to see what's happening with the economy of the EU. And also, many astrologers are commenting that the last time Neptune entered Aries was within one day of the US Civil War in April 1861. And history does not absolutely not have to repeat. But if you think of what that war was about, it was about a war about slavery. And what Neptune in Aries tends to do is to get in a fight to protect the underdog, the underprivileged, if you like. And so we could be seeing some very strong moves to protect those on the periphery of society, which would be wonderful. Underdogs being championed. It could also be issues around water and shipping and flooding and fishing and those things too. But I think also when Neptune is at that final degree of Pisces, we are going to become more and more aware of how malleable our reality is, and then start to take action about that, take mastery over that when Neptune enters Aries. So it's going to be a fascinating period. Also conjunct the IC of the US, as Kathy mentioned earlier. It's also conjunct the IC of Syria as well.
Thank you for adding that. I want to point out March 29th, the eclipse at 9 degrees Aries. I'm going to develop it in the next slide, but that eclipse is important for understanding the Venus and Mercury retrograde cycle. So let's look at that March on the personal view. On March 1st, Venus will begin a retrograde and it starts the retrograde at 10 degrees Aries. So remember the prior slide, the eclipse on March 29th at 9 Aries. So all of these are connected. And again, if you happen to have planets, as you see at the bottom part of the screen here, Mars is going to or Mercury is going to retrograde, and it's going to activate between 26 Pisces and 9 Aries. Venus retrograde is going to activate 24 Pisces to 10 Aries. Now, isn't that fascinating? I mean, think of the theme of the year. Saturn and Neptune going in and out of signs together, Uranus going back and forth, and now we have Mercury and Venus joining together and doing a retrograde pattern together, activating certain degree zones. Oh, it's just deliciously fascinating. So if you have planets between that late Pisces and maybe 9 or 10 degrees Aries, this time frame is going to be all over you. My moon is 10 Aries, so the eclipse and these retrogrades are going to be hitting my moon, which is probably why my eye kept, stopping at that point in the ephemeris. So March 1st, Venus begins the retrograde at 10 Aries. March 15th, Mercury begins the retrograde at 9 Aries. This is very, very powerful. Now we get to internalize a lot, and we're going to be internalizing Aries energy, which is again, courage, initiative, accountability, self-sufficiency. We get to internalize. Do we believe in our own capability? Are we courageous enough to knock on doors and make things happen? Are you courageous enough to ask for the sale or to speak up? This begins a pattern where we get to look at this. Then March 20th, we have the Aries equinox. And of course, the Aries equinox is when the sun hits 0 Aries. So again, Aries point comes into the picture. So we begin a pattern in February, March, these planets go retrograde and develop it. And we will discuss more on the personal level in April to see how this develops in a moment. Let's do the April worldview with Pam first.
Yeah, just to say on the Aries equinox, Kathy, that Uranus goes straight through Washington D.C. on the MCIC axis.
Yes.
So whatever is going to be happening around government at that time is going to be fairly radical, I would
Mhm.
say.
Lots of change, lots of change.
Lots and lots of change. So let me see. So April now, the full moon in Libra. And my goodness, that's strong. And again, thank you for the notation, Kathy, that the sun here is conjunct Eris, the sister of Mars, and square Mars. They are both warrior energy, and they are both very much about defending individual power. So this is going to be an absolutely fascinating full moon in that Eris and Mars are uncompromising around having that individual power and not having it reduced by the power of the state. But we have the full moon in Libra. The moon is in Libra here, and that is diplomacy. In its shadow expression, it can be people pleasing, going along with the crowd, etc. Which way is this going to go? I would say the revolutionary energy this year is going to be extremely strong because of Pluto in Aquarius. The revolutionary energy is going to overcome any kind of people pleasing. So that will be a fascinating full moon in Libra to see how that works out. And then we have a very hot, strong period between April 21st and April 23rd, Sun square Mars, Sun square Pluto. I mean, my goodness, that couldn't be much stronger in terms of power. And that's going to be really interesting in terms of where are we in terms of sovereignty. how far have we come in terms of our own sovereignty and the revolutionary movements that may be happening for freedom across the world? Has power begun to shift back to the people? I think those are the questions we're going to be asking ourselves at this time. What is fascinating here, I think it's on the 26th of April, Kathy, that we have the final Mars-Pluto opposition of the three. That was 3rd of November, 3rd of January, and 26th of April. Pluto is smack on China's moon at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So if we're looking for revolutionary energy amongst the people, that will be very interesting to see. So yeah, so I see actually a very revolutionary energy coming strong in April. Yeah,
Oh,
you
I
did.
did. I did put it. I just put it on the next screen. Sorry. Okay. Good.
Yeah, so that's really what I was talking about there, which will be absolutely fascinating because Pluto isn't just, well, Pluto 2025 is on the moon for China, 3 degrees of Aquarius. The ascendant for China is 5 degrees of Aquarius. So in 2026, it will be fascinating to see what has happened to the identity of China. Have the people gone into some kind of revolutionary phase, and how well will that go, given there is stronger support for people's revolution across the world? So yes, and then we have the new moon at 7 degrees of Taurus, and that is in a T square. That's pulling in this Mars Pluto opposition into a T square. So is there some new expression of how that Mars Pluto opposition has been working in the world? Because we also have, as again, thank you, Kathy has noted here, Saturn is closing in, getting closer and closer in on Neptune for its conjunction. They become exact to the degree in a conjunction in July. That's one of the reasons I was hotspotting July.
Mhm.
So April is another, as we've noted, a very, very assertive, power-packed month in terms of which way is the power going to go.
And it's going to be important for everybody to internalize personal empowerment, to release any concept that you might be a victim. This is a time to say, no, I can take action and I am up to the task of handling life. And this is something I think Saturn and Neptune entering Aries is really trying to achieve, which is something that's been missing in the world for a while, which is the basic intrinsic confidence that we are up to the task of handling whatever life brings us successfully. So Saturn and Neptune going into Aries is going to start triggering that, but we can certainly feel that when Mars is opposite Pluto. I'm up to the task of handling life successfully.
I think it's becoming your own hero, Kathy.
Yes. Yes. So when we look at April from the personal view, um, Mercury is going to end the retrograde early in April. It goes direct on April 7th at 26 degrees Pisces. So it started the retrograde at 9 Aries. It retrograded back into late Pisces. And so for those of you who may have been experiencing the Neptune transit to your late Pisces planets in your chart, this Mercury retrograde is going to help you get a lot of insights. April 12th, then, Venus ends the retrograde at 24 Pisces. Now, just look at that on screen. Isn't that amazing? That again, Mercury and Venus start off the retrogrades at 9 and 10 degrees Aries, go back to 24 to 26 Pisces. They're working together in this zone to help you integrate, to help us understand the hero within, our own confidence, but also compassion and sensitivity. It's a fascinating time. On April 16th, Mercury hits the Aries point. So 0 Aries. And again, watch for things to be revealed, information to be revealed. And then April 18th, Mars enters Leo. So, which is the setup right before we have that Mars Pluto opposition. So Mercury is going to complete the retrograde wave. Again, the wave for Mercury is between 26 Pisces and 9 Aries. Mercury completes that wave in April. Venus completes the wave in May, and we'll get there when we get to that slide. This is hot. This is so fascinating. And I guess one thing I want to say, I hope you're not afraid of Mercury retrogrades. You know, it's something I talk about in all my videos and all my work. And I usually will say Mercury might be retrograde, but I'm not. You know, Mercury retrograde just helps us internalize. Venus retrograde helps us internalize. You're going to hear all kinds of scary things if you peruse social media and astrology. You're going to hear Venus retrograde is going to break up relationships. Mercury retrograde is going to cause your electronics to break down. I have deleted that from my consciousness. Um, Retrogrades are internalization. They help us to process, they help us to rethink, reorganize, they help us to be very, very productive. And if you're going to receive either of these retrogrades, again, if you have planets between about 24 Pisces to 9 or 10 degrees Aries, extremely productive and powerful time for you in starting in February, but going into April and May, March,
Yeah, and
April, May.
because otherwise it becomes a belief system that
Yes.
everything breaks down, the printer jams, your car breaks, it becomes your belief system. I was born with Mercury retrograde and it hasn't held back my communication so far.
And when Mercury hits 0 Aries on April 16th, it hits your Mercury because you have Mercury. Pam has Mercury at the Aries point in her chart. All you have to do is think about if you have a planet at the Aries point in your chart, high visibility per the energy of that planet tends to happen more easily. Well, Pam is a master communicator and is known all over the world. So that Mercury, of course, we hear from you all the time because you're so prolific, but, that could be a powerful time for you.
Well, with Saturn Neptune landing on my Mercury, that's going to be
Yes,
that's going to be an interesting time, isn't it? Yeah.
that is. That is the next level of communication that you come up with. That's going to be brilliant.
God
All right,
bless
so
you.
May on the world view. Let's talk
Yeah.
about May.
Yeah, so Pluto super strong at the beginning of May. Remember, whenever a planet is stationary in either direction, its symbolism is amplified. So this is power. So it's now moving retrograde here. So not only is it hitting the Chinese moon exactly to the degree, it's also square to the EU midheaven IC. So I see some radical changes, both with Neptune opposing the ascendant of the Euro chart and Pluto here stationing, squaring the MCIC axis of the EU. I see some big, big changes happening in Europe. The German government has recently collapsed. The French government has recently collapsed. There are a lot of economic challenges currently in Europe. So that's going to be fascinating to see. Pluto is also square to the ascendant of NATO, which is at 3 degrees of Scorpio. So these are big blocks of power, if you like, to watch in 2025. And then we have the full moon in Scorpio opposing Uranus. This is going to be very intense. And of course, the Taurus Scorpio axis tends to be financial. So this is going to be shining a light on the financial system. What is happening with that? Is the old system of fiat money collapsing? Is there an increasing shift towards centralized digital currencies? Because there could be a lot of resistance to that. Or are we seeing more and more diversification in decentralized digital currencies? We're going to see a lot of truth revealed, Uranus truth, in the bright light of this full moon. But it's going to be around the financial system. It could also be underground, underhand crime, because Scorpio is very related to that. Things which are deeply buried, secrets coming to light in a big way. So much truth in 2025. And then May the 25th, Saturn enters Aries for the first time in its cycle and comes to conjunct Neptune. And I think there's going to be so many themes around Saturn Neptune, which all astrologers are going to be doing to death. But this I think we could see some interesting developments around shipping, around fishing, around perhaps where the sea level is, because Saturn is the boundary and Neptune is the sea. Are we going to see changes in the sea level with flooding, that kind
Mhm.
of thing? And if we look back to the last time that Saturn was in Aries from 1967 to 69, um, there was a lot of legislation, Saturn, around the civil rights movements, protecting, again, people on the periphery, protecting people who were the underdogs, if you like, the less privileged in society. So I think as we move forwards in 2025, we have some potential for those who feel they've been excluded from society to be better protected if we take that higher timeline.
And I love the fact that Saturn and Neptune in Aries is talking about, using the heroic, assertive energy with compassion. There's softness and there's strength working together. So it doesn't necessarily have to be slapping people around in their face using assertive energy, with hostility. It can be with compassion and sensitivity. That's what I'm hoping for.
And I think one other thing I'd like to highlight, because I think it's super strong at the moment, is um, a continued dissolution of the old structures, dissolution, Neptune, Saturn, old structures. That will continue. We've seen quite a bit already, a lot more to come, and it will continue through the next 2 years.
Yeah, and this is when we get towards the end of May and then into the summer, we're feeling this new beginning. We're feeling this new energy coming into the world. And there's a lovely aspect structure at that time, some sextiles, some flowing energy that takes place between Saturn and the North Node, Sun and Mercury, Uranus and Pluto. Um, so we can tune into harmony.
Yeah, this is a beautiful aspect that's starting to build, and it becomes clearer, I think, really in August, which we'll move on to. But this is one of the most propitious and positive aspects, I think, of the year, because we've got a trine between Uranus and Pluto, particularly when Uranus moves into Gemini in July and instantly forms that sign to sign trine to Pluto. But in the midpoint of that trine, we have both Saturn and the North Node and Neptune, which is beautiful. And we'll say maybe a little more about that as we get into August, but
Mhm.
it's incredibly positive for creativity, technological innovation, etc. So sextiles tend to indicate opportunities coming up with new technological developments, I would say at this point, Kathy.
And it's an easier flow. So we
Yeah.
can tune into harmony. On the personal view in May, Mars will complete the retrograde wave that began in October. So, what that means is Mars hits the same point at which it went into the retrograde, which is 6 degrees Leo. So, again, in May, the early part of May, people who have planets between 17 degrees Cancer and 6 Leo get to complete what Mars has been working on since October. I mean, this is big. So go back and be thinking about, what did you start working on within yourself? What were you rolling around in your consciousness? What were you um, trying to trying to understand at a deeper level starting in about October or so? In May, that gets to complete. And when Mars completes this retrograde, we're going to feel energy being released, whether it affects your chart or not. Venus completes the retrograde wave in Aries. In other words, Venus will hit 10 degrees Aries, which is the point at which it started the retrograde. So there are completions happening in May. May just, it seems like something wants to come forward and flow and resolve. I don't know. I really like the energy of May very much.
Yeah, much easier than April, I would say.
Yes. Yes. And there's always going to be tension and release, tension and release, tension resolution, tension resolution. That's how life works. And it's almost like if we were to talk about music, April would be a chord in music that would be more discordant, and then May it would resolve. And you wait for that when you're watching a movie and there's a scary part, and then the music, goes into the scary mode, and then it resolves itself and it goes into the happier mode. Well, that's the energy we're going to feel, I think, in May. So June, we move now into, I think, a very exciting month. So you talk about this first and then I'll chime in.
Yeah, yeah, look at that whole cascade of planets moving over the Aries point. I mean, it is just extraordinary. It could not be louder in terms of new beginnings. And of course, zero of Cancer is also on the Aries point. The Aries point is zero of the cardinals: Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. And so this feels lovely, actually. I see Jupiter being very comfortable in Cancer. It can be interesting to watch the housing market because Cancer is linked to housing and DIY, that kind of thing. I think self-care will come in strongly as well. People taking a lot more care of themselves, nurturing self in a bigger way. Um, Also, it's interesting that with all of this cardinal active, this 0 point activation, other countries to watch are the midheaven of Iran at 2 degrees of Capricorn, and the sun of New Zealand is at 1 degree of Libra. Sun represents the leader in a country. So Iran and New Zealand are being highlighted with this cardinal, zero cardinal activation as well. Um, I also think as we move into this final square of Jupiter Saturn, which of course has been running for months as well, this is the final square. Um, the seeding point for this was the winter solstice, the Capricorn solstice, on the 21st of December 2020. And so much to say about that, but it tends to
Yes.
set up the zeitgeist, the laws or the morals of the next 20 years. So I think that is going to be a real checkpoint, a reality check here around the ethics, the morality, the integrity, the accountability of whatever began in December 2020, and remember what was happening in December 2020. We're all very aware of what was happening. So ethics, integrity, morality, and accountability. I think this is another very big time for truth. Um, and also, I see a lot more water issues coming up potentially as well with Jupiter and Cancer, because it expands any potential for water issues.
Yeah, and speaking of water and the consciousness of water, and speaking of energy and how that affects water, on June 9th, we're going to have not only Jupiter entering Cancer, but it will be conjunct Mercury at 0 Cancer. So, one thing you could do on June 9th that could be just fascinating, and you can continue it through the rest of the month if you want, is a special little water blessing. Really connect with how your energy affects water. And I like to do something where I take a plastic water bottle and I write words on the outside of it with a Sharpie, and then I bless the water and I charge it and I fill it. But Jupiter conjunct Mercury in Cancer, that could be so fun to do at that time. But this is something coming into public view. And by the way, I also think Jupiter in Cancer, after Mars went through the retrograde in Cancer for so long, September, October, finally resolving in April. There's a reason Cancer is being so developed right now, which is self-care, self-nurturing, self-soothing, and taking charge of that. And that's going to work with Saturn and Neptune and Aries, which is saying, I need to do it myself. I am in charge of my own state of mind. I need to make sure I find ways to nurture and comfort myself and not depend on others to do that. See, again, Aries energy is coming back to self sufficiency.
It's interesting, Kathy, as well. Just on that Jupiter Saturn square, I wonder if there's still all of this sort of unidentified aerial activity, whether there could be some regulations or limitations on flight, Saturn
Mm,
limitations, Jupiter flight.
that's a great point. That's a brilliant observation.
Right.
Um, in June on the 17th, while Uranus is at the anaretic degree of Taurus, 29 degrees, it's going to be square Mars at 29 Leo. What a juicy day that's going to be. Mars square Uranus at anaretic degrees. Um, Please internalize that with your power and your strength. Make sure you're grounded and take a look at how you can live leadership on a personal level. This would be, how can I be an inspiring leader to others while I am grounded and solid? And that's a way to use that energy beautifully. Now, it could go another direction, which could be arrogance and fighting and stubborn and might makes right. It doesn't have to, but for you, you can internalize it by connecting with nature, grounding yourself, and letting your heart chakra just blast wide open as you inspire other people to be the best that they can be. Um,
Yeah,
what else do
beautifully.
you have to say on that?
Yeah, beautifully said, Kathy. Of course, this is the absolutely classic signature for seismic activity. Because I remember donkeys years ago, about 25 years ago, I attended a lecture by a very clever astrologer, seismologist. I'm so sorry I can't remember his name to credit him, but he'd done a whole analysis of earthquakes, and he found the most common signature was a hard aspect between Mars and Uranus when they were in fixed signs. And of course, they're both at the anaretic degree as well. So we could see quite a lot of seismic activity potentially. Then the other, I think, very obvious manifestation of this, because again, it's the anaretic degree. Taurus is, well, Uranus is digital, Taurus is currency, Taurus is also our bodies. And Mars in Leo is connected to sovereignty. Is there going to be something around digital currencies or digital identity? My body, my choice. My body, my choice. I think it could be a potential area of, to put it nicely, debate at
Mhm.
this time. This is a strong drive for freedom. Both Mars and Uranus want freedom. So I think the freedom movement is going to be exceptionally strong in June.
Exactly what I was going to say. It's not Mars and Uranus working together is not necessarily cooperation. It's individuality. It is holding your own thought. It is freedom. It's maverick energy.
Yeah.
And then on June 20th, we have the Cancer solstice. Again, the sun will hit the Aries point, 0 degree Cancer, with the Jupiter Saturn I mean the Saturn Neptune, Jupiter square Saturn Neptune, and I think we have a chart for it here. Yes. I set the Cancer solstice for US because it puts Uranus on the fourth house cusp. So I'll put my cursor here. So Uranus is on the IC and it puts Pluto on the ascendant. Um, so I happened to notice this and I thought, okay, well, let's look at the chart. Now, the planets are going to be in these same positions all over the world, just not necessarily in the same houses. So we're going to have the exact same aspects, exact same degree and sign everywhere. It's just, what house it's in will change based on where we set the chart. But for the US, oh boy, this is an interesting time, right?
Yeah. And which city, Kathy?
I did it for Washington, D.C.
Okay, Washington DC. Wow, look. Oh, wow. That's not going to be a dull time, is it? So, but it is a hugely expansive time. I see Sun conjunct Jupiter there in Cancer. They're both very happy there. I would say, particularly Jupiter. It's very idealistic. You've also got Jupiter in a quincunx to Pluto. That's,
Mhm.
for me, that's kind of visionary leadership. And also the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, you could read as visionary leadership.
Mhm.
So that doesn't have to be the external authority figure that you are deferring to or not. This can be you.
Mhm.
You are the visionary leader. You are your own hero. So I see this as incredibly expansive and incredibly positive at this time.
And Pluto right on the ascendant for the US. It's a power statement. And the MCIC in this chart for the solstice set for Washington, D.C., well, President Trump has his midheaven at 24 Taurus. So this is going to be activating, he's probably going to be making some very big moves at that time. And hopefully they will be harmonious and successful. So watch for the solstice, whether you're in the US or not. This is a power time. Sun Jupiter conjunct for the solstice. How nice is that? Squaring Saturn and Neptune. I'm going to look forward to that. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. All at the Aries point. Something wants to be seen, something wants to come forward, something wants to be revealed.
It's beautiful. And also, Kathy, you've got the moon in exaltation at 0 of Taurus.
Yes.
Again,
And
another
Venus in
zero.
Taurus.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I mean, the moon is exalted, Venus is in its own sign. And isn't that a yod that we have between Sun, Jupiter, and Mars?
Mhm, mhm.
Aspecting Pluto, that's a yod. So finger of fate, finger of destiny, finger of God, highlighting Pluto, which is power, but it's altruistic power. It's power to the people, it's humanitarian power. That's how I would read that, and tremendous force and drive towards that, whether that's
So
coming from the external or the people.
So we are taping this at the very end of December of 2024. Let us all now project something very positive happening mid-year of 2025, not just for the US, but for the whole world. Because what you are thinking about while you are listening to this is helping to co-create what is yet to come. Pam and I don't do a lot of fear mongering. We don't do a lot of scary predictive work because there's a responsibility we have to get our thinking lined up with what we want instead of what we don't want. I mean, we don't lie, we don't sugarcoat, we don't avoid the tension aspects. But if we collectively are thinking about, boy, this solstice happening in Cancer in June could be so beautiful. We help to create that.
Yeah, really good point, Kathy. We are co-creating in every moment. And for me, I don't know how you feel, Kathy, because we hadn't rehearsed this at all. We just went straight into it. The second half of the year feels more expansive, more exciting, more positive than the first half, which has some challenges in it. I don't know how you feel about that.
I agree. Because as we have Saturn and Neptune in Aries, energy is moving very quickly too. It's action mode. That's part of it too. All right. So, and then in July, we have some juicy stuff. So here's the world view.
Wow. I mean, this was my really big month when I was looking at the whole year because Uranus enters Gemini, and it hasn't. It was last in Gemini, I think, around 1941. And in fact, other astrologers have pointed out that in previous times when Uranus has been in Gemini, there's always been a war. There's been the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 83, the US Civil War, 1861 to 65, World War II. The US entered in 1941. The past does not have to define our future. We have risen in consciousness since those times, and I think we really are getting to the point where people say 99% of the world's population do not want war, we want peace, we want unity, we want people coming together. So I don't think it's going to replicate in that way at all, but this feels very exciting. Uranus feels very comfortable in Gemini. It's interesting that the IC of Israel is at 29 degrees of Taurus. So Uranus will just have passed that. It'd be interesting to see what happens with the country Israel. But to me, this Uranus is about freedom. Uranus is about awakening. So it's awakening our mind. I see this as a big, big month of truth. Again, truth spilling out, but awakening people to a higher state, a higher level of being. Uranus as an archetype is to do with higher mind. And also, I really feel that galactic connections, in a way that they're not being proposed at the moment, but galactic connections will help to quantum leap us in our technology and understanding. And as I think I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of new internets, new social media channels will promise freedom from censorship, and they will just proliferate.
And
Um,
Pam, isn't it interesting though that Venus enters Gemini just 2 days before Uranus does? So we get Uranus with Venus together making this grand entrance saying, here I am. And Venus joins in and goes, yeah, let's be social, which is a
yeah,
Gemini thing.
beautiful. A lot of new ideas, new technologies, as I say, particularly because Uranus will instantly go into that trine to Pluto, and they're both in air signs, so
Mhm.
it's a complete trine.
Mhm.
And also July the 4th, Neptune hits 2 degrees of Aries. That is pretty much at the midpoint of that Uranus Pluto
Mhm.
trine, which is what I was referring to before. That apparently, and credit to Ray Merriman on this, has not happened for 500 years
Mm.
and is incredibly positive in terms of the creative blossoming for humanity.
Mhm.
In July, Saturn is retrograde at 1 degree of Aries, but they are then within about half a degree of each other, Saturn, Neptune,
Mhm.
within half a degree of each other. So I think we're going to get a very good idea of what's going to come up much more fully in February 2026 when they are exact to the degree and the minute. I think we're going to see a lot of innovations around light. One of the previous times Uranus was in Gemini, there was a whole new theory of light that was developed by a Dutch scientist called Huygens, I think in 1690s, understanding of light, light for healing, light in terms of how we understand the cosmos. I think that's going to be really big. I think also, remember what I was saying about the redefinition of Russia earlier in those dates? I think, again, another theme around Saturn Neptune could be flooding and drought, flooding and drought, flooding in
Mhm.
some areas, drought in others. But the more that we can integrate this energy and come together in peace and compassion, the less those extremes will manifest in the world, I'd like to say.
One other thing that I think is that Aries represents a frontier, something new to be discovered. The catalytic energy to discover. And so when we think of a frontier and we think Saturn, Neptune conjunct in Aries, making contact with Uranus and Gemini. So Saturn and Neptune will reach the peak degree. The highest degree they're going to reach in July, because then they retrograde back and they will eventually retrograde back to Pisces. But I just wonder what kind of communication is going to be taking place on the galactic level, on in space. The frontier of Aries, Saturn and Neptune in Aries. We may be exploring space at some new level. There may be some communications that are taking place as Uranus enters Gemini. It's interesting to me,
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Because Uranus is the galactic and Gemini is communication. Absolutely. It was interesting, Kathy. I was listening to the wonderful astrologer Lynn Bell last night, and she was
Mhm.
talking about Uranus in Gemini. And she talked about this being, like a big flash, an awakening, a sudden revelation of truth. But what was also interesting, thinking of Gemini as choice, she said, at that point, a choice will have to be made.
Mm,
And something really
yes,
ignited for me when she said that, because it was almost like, is this technology to enhance our neural networks? And is that
yes,
a wise decision if you're thinking like a chess player?
right, exactly. Well, and then there is the frontier that we all carry within us, which is the frontier of our own consciousness, of our own mind, and the capability we have with the body, mind, spirit connection in personal healing. When we direct our thoughts and our consciousness and our energy to heal ourselves or heal others, or, telepathy or to co create, so the concept of frontier and discovery and exploration is so strong in our mind, in space, in science, in the world. I mean, it's juicy. It's percolating. It's like sparkling energy that we can all connect with at that time. So
Yeah,
get
and it's all,
excited.
yeah, absolutely. I think this is an amazing month. And Uranus in Gemini could also be galactic neural networks, those super
Yes,
highways of information that Professor Robert Temple talks about.
absolutely.
Like your image, writ large,
Hmm.
Kathy.
We have a Mercury retrograde that's going to take place in July in Leo. And so that's a time where you're going to, if you have Leo planets, it begins at 15 Leo, where you get to go within and integrate and connect. Mercury will end up going direct in August, which is fascinating. When we get to August, I'm going to talk about it because the degree at which Mercury ends the retrograde is the same degree that Mars hit when it was um, starting the retrograde in Leo. So, what happens in July and August, if you have planets in early Leo that were affected by the Mars retrograde that was taking place, which ended in May, you get to develop something new with that. This is stage development that is pretty strong. And then July 24th, there's a new moon at 2 Leo opposite Pluto. Anytime we have a lunation where Pluto's involved, we have to manage our empowerment, manage our strength, manage how we use our energies. It's deep, it's profound. Do you have anything to say about that new moon?
No, it's so much of next year's about power, isn't it? And that's highlighted again. It's sovereignty, individual power,
Mhm,
as opposed to state power.
mhm,
It's just so clear all the way through the
mhm.
year. Yeah.
And anytime Mercury's retrograde in Leo, this is when we get to manage our own internal sense of leadership and authority. And again, the confidence of, am I able to handle whatever life brings me successfully? Please, this needs to come back into consciousness so badly, I think, in 25 and beyond in the next generations. My first grandchild is due to come into the world in the April timeframe. And I was thinking about the fact that, he's going to come into the world the same time that the consciousness of personal confidence of being able to handle the world, you know, successfully comes back into view, not fear of the world, not fear that I can't do it, but instead the belief of I can do it. And I'm very excited about this.
He couldn't have a better grandmother, could he?
Oh, I'm excited. So August in the worldview, then we have this beautiful grand trine in air. Take it away, Pam.
Yeah, this just feels beautiful. This feels so exciting that the Mars is in Libra is activating that Uranus Pluto trine. That Uranus Pluto trine will run for the next 2 years. So this is an activation point, and it's wonderful around ideas, innovation, science, communication, internet, aviation, but in harmony with the Earth, Libra. We are going to be developing with technologies not against nature and the earth as they have been in the past, but in harmony with. And I think we're going to resurrect ancient wisdom, shamanic practices. There's going to be so many discoveries. And this is what young people are doing right now. I'm sharing those, as I say, on Facebook every day, where they are working in harmony with nature and the earth. And this is what that grand trine for me is all about. It's an
Mhm.
ignition point for that.
Mhm. And I also call it a new awareness of our inner technology. External technology is very, very developed with cell phones and computers and on and on and on, but inner technology, which is our connection with our body, mind, and spirit, inner technology where we can go in and nourish one of the organs in our body and heal it, inner technology where we can energize what we want to come into our world, what we want to achieve, and that is already within us. And this grand trine in air just opens this delicious time frame where it flows easily, easily. I'm looking forward to it.
Very different energy, doesn't it, to the first few months? Very different.
Very, very. On the personal level in August, we have August 22nd. We're going to have a new moon in Virgo, which is square to Uranus. So anytime we have a lunation that is involving one of these outer planets, it always makes a very strong statement. So the new moon in Virgo squaring Uranus, we get to, yeah, the new moon in Virgo and early Virgo. There we go. This is a time when we get to really internalize our own sense of freedom and individuality. I would say at this new moon in Virgo, feel free to be unique. Feel free to sing your unique song, to be who you are, to speak up if you need to speak up, to be unusual. I will never forget, I decided to go gray before it was fashionable many years ago. And it was a bold move on my part. And I said, I just don't want to have to dye my hair anymore. I'm going to go silver. And I remember people looking at me strangely. I remember some people saying, wow, that's a very brave choice. But it was a unique signature I needed to do. And I'm thinking of this with this new moon in Virgo. Be who you are, make your personal statement on the personal level. Mercury ends the retrograde on August 11th at 4 Leo. So it began the retrograde in July, ends the retrograde August 11th. And this is what I was referring to when I was mentioning that Mars cycle that happened, and Mars going retrograde at 6 Leo, ending that retrograde or hitting the 6 Leo resolution point again in May. So pay attention to what was going on in your life back in, let's say, November, December, and then again in May. And this Mercury retrograde resolving in August may trigger something, may develop ideas that you started back in the fall of 2024. It's a fascinating time. And then August 27th, we have Venus opposite Pluto. That's always interesting when Venus is opposite Pluto. Venus, it will be people, the social concept, and Pluto is power. Um, It can support the new moon in Virgo on August 22nd, which says, I have the courage to be myself. I have the courage to be authentic, and I'm going to speak up when I want to speak up. Well, Venus opposite Pluto would be empowered social energy. What do you have to say about the Venus opposite Pluto in addition?
Yeah, just on a global front, I'd say fundamental changes in wealth and currency.
August, I think we're still under the beams of a lot of positivity, but August, it's a little bit of jiggling in the foundation of things. There's movement, there's power movement happening in August
Yeah.
with those energies. September, boy, there's a lot of energy happening in September.
So Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces. I think again we could see regulation Saturn around the seas, who owns the seas, because that's a bit of a blurry area. Fishing, shipping, ethical questions around immigrants and immigration, the underprivileged in general. I think we could see ancient buildings, cities, temples emerge from the sea. I think that could be quite major. And also remembering this idea of legislation that protects those people on the periphery. It was interesting going back to a previous cycle of Saturn at this point. Alcoholics Anonymous was founded in 1935 at this point to help to protect them, to manage their
Mhm. Mhm.
alcoholism, their addiction, Pisces. Then we have a lunar eclipse 15 of Pisces. It's interesting, both the lunar eclipses this year, I believe, are total, Kathy, so they're very strong. And so, again, this is raising issues around health, the immune system, infections, the blood, that kind of thing. This is at the same time that Uranus is moving stationary retrograde. So we have an incredibly strong Uranus at the same time as this lunar eclipse. So that will be absolutely fascinating to see what is being revealed, particularly around health, because eclipses are also times, yes, that either the sun or the moon are blocked for a period, but then there's a period of revelation after that. And I think Uranus stationary is really going to emphasize that very strongly. So more truth coming to light. And then 21st of September, we have the solar eclipse in Virgo. And that, of course, is also on the world axis
And
because
we're going
it's
to show the chart of that in a second here.
which is going to be absolutely fascinating. And
Yes.
so, what is developing in a new way around health? What new healing techniques. I mean, there's so many healing devices and techniques already out there. I think they could just explode round about this time,
Mhm.
connected to sound and light and all completely natural, connected to the ancient wisdom of the earth, plant medicine, etc. I think we could see an explosion of healing remedies in their various forms round about that time.
Yeah, because it's also interesting. The new moon in Virgo in August um, correlates and is connected to the solar eclipse in Virgo in September. There's a reason that this is so strong right now in that sign. And the other thing is we have to remember that the Aries point really begins at 29 degrees mutable. So 29 Virgo for that eclipse is hitting the Aries point. And Saturn, isn't it fascinating? Saturn backs up into Pisces in the same month when we have an eclipse in Pisces and then the Virgo eclipse. I mean, there is such an incredible intelligence about how these energies are working and what they're trying to develop. So let's
Yeah,
look
because
at the
very,
eclipse. I set it for London. I went ahead
wow.
and set the chart for that because it puts Uranus right on the ascendant. So it's going to be interesting to see what's happening in the UK for this Virgo eclipse. But this gives you a visual of the energies. We have the sun and moon over here at 29 Pisces, opposite Saturn and Neptune, but Neptune is in Aries. We have Uranus still in Gemini, but right on the ascendant um, for London. Um, this is a highly charged eclipse.
It sure is. And because obviously the sun and moon, by definition, are on the world axis, um, and this is a whole initiation period, as we've been talking all the way through. And yet, when you have an opposition, it's like something or someone trying to work against you. So Saturn being the old traditional structures, there may be some, and that's highlighted really by Pluto on the midheaven. What is working against that kind of rebirth for humanity? And how well are people taking that with Uranus on the ascendant? Not very, I would say, not very.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's a very revolutionary energy here of saying, enough, we're not doing this anymore.
When Virgo is used at the highest level, when it is lived at the highest level or the most positive level, then we get service, we get humility, we get efficiency, we get precision. It's very, very beautiful energy. Opposite Saturn and Pisces, Pisces working at that highest level, you also get humility, you also get service, and you get compassion. So, that consciousness may be within all of us of wanting to engage service and humility and compassion. But the shadow side, if there's tension, the shadow side can show up at any time. And the shadow side of Virgo can be criticism, that nitpicky, the editorial eye, seeing what's wrong instead of what's right. And the shadow side for Pisces can be blaming other people or, placing blame outside and not taking responsibility. Um, or feeling victimized. So this is loaded for bear on a personal level. Use this eclipse to surrender to service at the highest level, surrender to compassion, and put your ego aside and let your light shine with total lovingness as best you can. Be of service to somebody else during this eclipse with pure love, but pay attention because, there may be some people going into criticism. I mean, we see that on social media all the time, criticizing world leaders, criticizing every move everybody makes, the nitpicky energy. It may be pretty strong during this eclipse. So you get to decide what you do with this during that time.
And of course, Kathy, also it is an out of sign grand trine in air.
Yes.
You've got Uranus in air, Pluto in air, Sun and Moon not in air, but just about to tip it. So that's known as an out of sign grand trine
Mhm.
in air.
Mhm.
So that is extremely positive for change, revolution, new ideas, people forging forwards.
And if we talk about completions and beginnings, this eclipse highlights the need to complete what Saturn in Pisces and also Neptune in Pisces, even though it's not in Pisces during this eclipse, but highlights what we are trying to complete with that Piscean energy. So it's a powerful time. And if you're lucky enough to receive contact from this, if you have a 29-degree Virgo planet in your chart, then it's even more impactful. September on the personal view, Mercury is going to enter Virgo September 2nd and will stay in Virgo until September 18th. Mercury in Virgo is so wonderful. Mental acuity is strong. Our analytical energy is strong. This is, when the need to analyze or research or come to new ideas. Mercury in Virgo works so well. And then on September 22nd, Mars enters Scorpio, and Mars is very powerful in Scorpio. It's the strongest place Mars can be in my mind. When Mars is in Scorpio, we need a mission to accomplish. That's when our energy is just laser hot and strong. And it'll stay in Scorpio from September 22nd to November 4th. So I like the fact that in September, in addition to everything else that's going on, we have Mercury very strong and later Mars very strong. The eclipse, or not eclipse, I'm sorry, the Libra equinox takes place on September 22nd. And I just randomly chose to set it for Washington, D.C. It's not that there were any planets on angles, but I wanted to at least just show the chart for the Libra equinox. And that's when the sun hits 0 Libra. And the reason I wanted to show it is because it's exactly opposite Neptune. This is, I mean, that's pretty spectacular. And Mars is square Pluto, and Venus is square Uranus.
Tremendous drive for freedom here, don't you think, Kathy?
Thank you. I was at a loss for words for a second because it's so big.
Yeah.
Tremendous drive for freedom. Yes.
Aries is independence, freedom. I want to do it my way. Aquarius, very strong freedom energy, ruled by Uranus, squaring Venus. Gemini is also to do with freedom, non-conformism. I'm not going to go along with the crowd. Mars, as you say, Kathy, is absolutely on a mission and driven. This is such a power-packed Libra equinox for freedom. This is a freedom movement.
Echoed and resounding over and over and over again in this chart, mixed with that beautiful Neptunian energy, though. So it can also be creativity, creative problem solving. But you want to point your energy to get something done during this time. Again, Mars and Scorpio, this is not when you want to be sitting around just thinking. You want to be moving and using your muscles and achieving things. But the creative potential for this equinox is very strong with that Neptune there too.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, October worldview, and here we have the graphic again of the pendulum swinging.
Wow. I mean, the endings, beginnings just keep going. I mean, such a great theme for this whole presentation. But yeah, on the 14th, Pluto moves stationary direct at 1 degree of Aquarius. The question here is power now shifting back to the people? This is a great reality checkpoint. How fully has power shifted back to the people? Because this is the year it really begins in a big way. And also Neptune retrograding back into Pisces. I think we could see some legislation around plant medicines, mind altering drugs, and that kind of thing, and states. I think we could see more regulation around euthanasia. That's happening at the moment in the UK. The permission to die bill and that kind of thing. I think we could see the extinction of some species, but the rebirth of, or the birth of new species coming in. I think also what's fascinating is because Neptune is at the midpoint of that trine between Uranus and Pluto, we could see, and it's happening already, but more devices, particularly with Uranus in Gemini, more devices to help us reach transcendence.
Hmm.
Whether it's the Apple, I can't remember what they're called, the goggles that take you into a different dimension, technology that helps us quantum leap into transcendence.
Hmm.
And does that help us make better neural network connections to do it ourselves?
And I think we all need to be paying attention to our own intuition and our psychic senses and actively trying to develop them. And again, it goes back into the fact that we are all intuitive. We all have intuitive senses that we use every single day. Neptune going back into Pisces for this last hurrah until early 26 is designed to make us a lot more aware of it and to use it mindfully, to internalize your power in that way. So if you need an answer, you can go directly to the universe and you can get it. And I think we need to be feeling that in October.
I think that could not be more important, Kathy, and well said, that we've all through our lives and many lifetimes, we've deferred to external authorities, external
Mhm.
devices. This is the time, and you said it beautifully about developing our own internal spiritual technology, and
Mhm.
that is absolutely based in the heart.
Mhm. One of the things I'm excited about the book that I'm writing about intuition is not only in the book will it have the description of the techniques and how to do them, but then I'm going to record the meditations themselves and you can access that so that you can be led through it. But it's designed to teach you the pathway and the techniques for achieving these things like inner healing or telepathy or sensing the future or the past or tuning into other people and connecting. And so this wave that happens back into that last degree of Pisces, it deliciously supports that. Earlier in October, we're going to have Venus opposite Neptune. That's just a little quick thing that takes place, but I wanted to point it out because that is such beautiful creative energy and it is powerfully loving, high level empathy, high level unconditional love, beauty and harmony and grace, intuitive. Make a little note. And in that time frame in October, reach out with your consciousness and enjoy that. And then on October 21st, we have a new moon in Libra. And what's fascinating is that new moon in Libra, which is an air sign, is going to have Mercury, Mars, and Scorpio conjunct. So there's this combination of needing to communicate and connect with people, but it's very deep. Mercury, Mars in Scorpio conjunct. This is not messing around. This is saying your truth with power. And hopefully, the new moon in Libra will add grace to that. So that's going to be an interesting new moon. So then in November, here we have this wave pattern on the world view because Uranus backs up into Taurus. Go for it, Pam.
It'll be fascinating to see, because this is really its last phase in this entire cycle that it's in Taurus, because in April 2026 it's fully in Gemini, I think until 2033.
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
that's
14
correct.
years.
Yeah. So we are possibly likely to see, because
Oh,
again, we're back into Earth, extreme weather. It could be, this is
mhm.
winter in the Northern Hemisphere. We could see power outages, aviation disruptions, cyber attacks, more digital developments, because I think they're going to run all through next year. A big, big, big demand for bodily freedom in this final phase of Uranus in Taurus, bodily freedom, and almost the dividing line being, yes, AI is exploding with Pluto in Aquarius, but the dividing line is, not entering my body, not being invasive. That's personally, as a country bumpkin, my dividing line, but you have to choose yours, what feels right for you. But yeah, I think that's we are into the last run of this, and because Uranus will be crossing that anoretic degree, how is the Earth behaving in her extreme weather right now and in her seismic activity?
Exactly. And I want to correct what I said. I said 14 years. It's 7 years. Uranus stays in a sign for 7 years. I was thinking of Neptune, which is 14. But yes, Uranus is going to stay in Gemini until 2033. So this last hurrah in Taurus, 29 degrees Taurus, going back to the now, going back to the peacefulness of being able to gather all of your atoms in this present moment. On the spiritual level, I continue to think, the appreciation of the moment and managing anxiety, and catastrophic thinking and worry, which is often going into the future thinking about terrible things that might happen. And Uranus and Taurus says, no, no, no. Come back to the now and enjoy this moment here. And it changes how you experience time. That is one thing I've learned in this 7 year pattern with Uranus and Taurus is when I am fully present, time stands still in a way. Time moves very slowly when I'm present. And I think in terms of the fact I don't get a whole lot of time off. I know you don't either, Pam. We've both had very, very busy years. And so if I don't usually get a full day off, I might get a few hours off. And when I have a few hours off, I take advantage of it by being completely present. And it's amazing how long 2 hours can be when you are present and
And
how fast.
it's the only place where your power lies. Because if you're
Yes.
thinking about the past or the future, you're leaking power.
Yes, because they'll go by in a flash if you're not present in the moment. And pretty soon you go, where'd those 2 hours go? So it changes your concept of time. But so November 7th, Uranus is moving back into Taurus, and we're going to feel that shift, big energy shift from being in Gemini. Remember to go connect with nature.
Yeah, super important.
And then in November, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. It begins on November 9th. Um, and it will end the retrograde on the 29th. So it starts off in Sagittarius, it scoots back to Scorpio. Um, and in the middle of that, Jupiter begins the retrograde at 25 Cancer. So the highest degree that Jupiter will reach in 2025 is 25-degree Cancer. And then it retrogrades and it will revisit some of those lower degrees in Cancer. So the Mercury retrograde in November, I always find it interesting, at least here in the United States. We have Thanksgiving in November, and then we have a lot of travel that happens. And when Mercury's retrograde during that time, we just need to pack our flexibility with us. Anytime Mercury's retrograde, remember the key is to be flexible, to be flexible, to be able to pivot easily, not to be attached to things working out a certain way. And then it seems to work really well. Um, I wanted to show the chart of the new moon in Scorpio for November 20th. And the reason I wanted to show the chart for this, now remember, this is set for Washington, D.C., but the planets will be in the exact same position all over the world. It's just, they won't be in these particular houses. But for the U.S., on November 20th, this new moon in Scorpio places Saturn right here on the descendant, the seventh house cusp, and Neptune. So there's something about this new moon that may be very powerful for the US. And this new moon in Scorpio is going to be opposite Neptune in Taurus. Now, there is a grand trine in water happening, and that's highlighted in blue here on the chart. Very complex new moon. I mean, Scorpio new moons are complex anyway, and Mercury will be conjunct the sun and the moon. This is going to be fascinating to see what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, the Grand Trine in water, I think, is lovely. I see a lot of water solutions around pollution because I think of Scorpios having a lot to do with toxicity. And there's some incredible innovations around, about clearing up the oceans,
Mhm.
clearing up seas that are coming in. So water solutions, and also I think great compassion coming in for any kind of extreme situation that may have occurred. It could be flooding with Neptune 29 of Pisces, so much water in this chart anyway. Be flooding, extreme compassion for that. But it could also be, again, some extreme storm or wind or hurricane or something, because Uranus is linked to those opposing this new moon. But again, this urge for freedom is so strong and it's fixed.
Mhm.
It's we are not going to budge. The urge for freedom is massive at this time. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing here, Kathy.
Yeah, this is right around my birthday, so my solar return will be receiving this, and I'm just programming it's going to be fabulous. There's just
Yeah.
no other way to view this. But yeah, anytime you see Uranus standing out here, individuality is strong. The need to be free, the need to do things your own way, the need to think outside the box. The maverick energy is very strong. Um, but with this grand trine in water, hopefully there'll be enough harmony that we can speak up and communicate with each other in a loving way. But boy, it's going to be interesting. All right. And then the last thing in November, on November 24th, Mars is going to square the nodes. And on November 27th, Saturn ends the retrograde and goes direct at 25 Pisces. So Mars squares the nodes. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I always see planets that square the nodes as a kind of choice point.
Hmm.
And it's a kind of choice point, again, linked to your own sense of power. I think choice point also linked to how you handle your health, because the nodal axis is in Pisces Virgo. I think also there could be great restlessness, because they're all immutable signs, to live elsewhere, to have some kind of ideal place to live. And there's quite a churn or restlessness, a drive to do that, because, of course, um, you know, Mars is in Sagittarius, and that's the adventurer, the traveler, the explorer, linking to Pisces, the ideal, the ideal sacred Virgo place to land, is what I'm seeing there. And then Saturn direct, I think this is its last run in Pisces for this entire cycle of 29 and a half years. I see something really major coming up from either the deep seas, or possibly, I know it's obviously water, but the deep earth connected to an ancient civilization, because
Hmm.
Saturn is very often the ancient. So something coming up from the seas, and it could even be an inner earth thing, but a lot of wisdom being brought up one way or another. That's what I feel for that, because it's so important, that last run in Pisces.
Well, in that new moon in Scorpio on the 20th, there's shakeup. It's something, is going to be some kind of earth movement or some kind of shakeup in our ideas or how we're seeing things. And, this Mars squaring the nodes, Mars in Sagittarius squaring the nodes. The other thing that brings up for me, because Sagittarius can have such strong opinions. And when there's not flexibility with our opinions, then we fight and we get into polarization and we get into this nastiness that happens. So as it squares the nodes, hopefully we're going to be able to be sharing our ideas, but still getting along, still able to listen to other people's ideas. So November is a fascinating month with Saturn um, going direct in Pisces and that powerful new moon on the 20th. I think it's going to be pretty exciting. And Mercury retrograde, there's a whole lot going on in November. Which brings us to the last month of the year. Oof.
Well,
And
Neptune going direct on 29 of Pisces, the last gasp in Pisces in its 165-year cycle. So a lot could be coming up again about the seas and flooding, about our own sense of spirituality, in a very major way. And recognizing, and I mentioned this before, but this is kind of the real culmination point of recognizing how malleable our reality is, that tomorrow is not yet formed. It's not a film set we walk onto. We are creating tomorrow right at this very moment, discussing this. It's plasticine, it's modeling clay, and really stepping into your spiritual authority in recognizing that. And then the new moon at 28 of Sagittarius, I mean, that's pretty much smack on the galactic center. And there's a great sense, I think, of a whole new world with this. The beginning of a whole new consciousness is dawning at this time, because this is really running into the Capricorn solstice the next day. Of that is setting up the tone for the next 3 months, running into that very important 20th of February 2026, when there's an exact to the minute Saturn Neptune conjunction, which is a whole new episode for humanity. So to me, this is energizing this new level of consciousness, this new episode for humanity, which is incredibly exciting. And the other thing to say is, we've got this running sextile now between Neptune and Pluto for the next couple of years at least. The seed point for that was in 1891 to 1893, when they were conjunct. And that was the development of quantum physics, chaos theory, fractal mathematics. So I think we're going to see an explosion of new discoveries around our view of the cosmos, the universe. Astrology could be, as we know, knocked into a cocked hat, Kathy. All of that, the nature of reality, plasma physics, all of that is now
Mm-hmm.
open field, I
Mm-hmm.
think, from this point on.
And space travel, all of, everything will accelerate tremendously.
Yeah.
Everything is going to accelerate tremendously. I think it is interesting, though, that Saturn ends the retrograde in Pisces just what, 2.5 weeks from when Neptune ends the retrograde in Pisces. They both go direct within, again, so they're traveling as a pair, and they're traveling as a pair in 2025 for a reason, going back and forth between the two signs, so close together in everything that they do for a reason, which is grounded spirituality. Saturn wants to anchor Neptune into the world. Neptune doesn't want to be anchored in the world. Neptune wants to float around in an evanescent, kind of dreamy state, but Saturn brings it into the world. Very interesting. So we reached the end of the year, and I think in summary, I like this concept that 2025 offers us an evolvable moment for humanity, for the earth itself and the consciousness of the earth, for all things related to life. There's an evolvable moment as we are swinging back and forth, Uranus going back and forth, Saturn, Neptune going back and forth, the harmonies of the energies that come together later during those grand trines. It's an evolvable moment, and I'm so excited about 2025. I want to jump in with both feet and grow as much as I can possibly grow.
Yeah, I'd really agree, Kathy. And because we're going to see so much of the collapse of the old, that releases so much energy to jump into a new state. And I've talked about this before, but when I was talking to Dr. Jude Currivan, the cosmologist, she said that that offers the maximum opportunity for a complete change of state. When everything is kind of broken down and in chaos and in churn, that's the opportunity for the jump. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's going to
Yes,
be an absolutely historic year.
a quantum leap, a
Yeah,
quantum leap on the quantum level.
yeah, 100%. It's going to be very fast.
Mm-hmm. Completions and beginnings. So, on many levels, not only in culture, not only in science, not only in spirituality, but personally also, we get to experience this. And again, I think the beginning has to do with our evolution understanding we are capable, we are strong, and our confidence in knowing whatever happens, we have the connection with the universe and we can get answers in every single moment to be able to successfully handle life. And when we have that foundational level belief system and confidence, how we go through life changes dramatically.
100%. Fabulous, Kathy. Loved going over the jumps with you as yet again. It's going to be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
It absolutely will. And thank you, as always, for being part of this. I really appreciate this. And it's amazing how fast the year went by. And hopefully, we'll do it again for the next year. And it'll be here in just a heartbeat, it seems.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Fabulous. And thank you everyone for being with us here and staying the course and listening. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Yes. All right. Many blessings to you all. Bye for now.
Lots of love. Bye.